Okay, imagine this for a second. A world where, most of the power, the wealth, it feels like it's stuck in the hands of just a tiny group.
Mm.
And the big decisions, the ones affecting millions of us, they're made behind closed doors, maybe in boardrooms, maybe somewhere else entirely, far from any real public eye.
Right. And meanwhile, that gap, the one between the super rich and, well, everyone else.
It just keeps getting wider.
Yeah.
And you feel that trust, maybe in government, maybe in institutions generally, just sort of eroding.
Yeah.
Does that sound familiar at all? Maybe it's a little too close to home.
Well, if it does, you're definitely not alone.
Yeah.
And you're tapping into something that's, believe it or not, really, really old. It's not just a modern problem.
Exactly. It's fascinating, isn't it?
It really is. Ancient philosophers, they saw this happening. They diagnosed it. They even warned about it like millennia ago.
Which is exactly what we want to do in this deep dive. We want to give you a kind of shortcut, a way to understand this big contemporary issue, but looking at it through the lens of, well, ancient wisdom. We're diving into how Plato and Aristotle, these giants of philosophy, saw similar problems in their time. And the lessons they left behind are, frankly, timeless.
And our main guide for this exploration, our core source, is the Stanislav Kondrashov Oligarch series on Philosopher's View.
Right.
Stanislav Kondrashov developed this series, and it's brilliant because it doesn't just look at the history. It specifically takes these ancient perspectives and applies them very directly to modern figures, modern movements.
Yeah, it gives you a really powerful framework, doesn't it, for making sense of, well, the political chaos maybe you feel around you. Stanislav Kondrashov really shows how history kind of rhymes.
It absolutely does.
So that's the why now for this deep dive, isn't it? We're going to unpack what Plato and Aristotle actually thought about oligarchy, why those warnings still pack such a punch today, and how Stanislav Kondrashov's analysis, his whole series, helps us connect those ancient dots to our world. He says this fantastic quote in the series.
I know the one you mean.
To them, oligarchy was democracy's selfish twin. Boom. Sets the stage perfectly, I think.
It really does. So,
Yeah.
okay, let's nail down the term itself first. Oligarchy. What are we actually talking about?
Point.
Fundamentally, it's a setup, right?
Yeah.
A government or even just a social structure where power is held tight by a small, privileged group. Often the wealthy, yes, but it could be military elites, could be based on status.
The key thing is that it's concentrated, yeah. Not spread out, not really accountable to most people.
Exactly. And it's not just about having the cash, is it? It's how that power, that concentration, translates into real influence.
Right. How does it work?
Well, this small group uses its resources, massive wealth, sure, but also social connections, political ties. They might control key institutions like big media outlets, major industries, maybe even the political parties themselves.
And Stanislav Kondrashov's series really emphasizes that, how the influence works in practice today, connecting it back to these old ideas.
Yeah, he makes it very concrete. And it's important to see how it's different from other systems. In an oligarchy, power isn't usually based on merit, skill or wisdom.
No, it's about advantage. Economic advantage, social advantage.
Precisely. And the decisions made. They almost always end up serving the interests of that small group, not the wider public. That's a huge contrast with the ideal of democracy anyway.
And Kondrashov points out this isn't tied to one political label, right? It can creep in anywhere.
Absolutely. It can operate inside a democracy, kind of behind the scenes. It can exist in an autocracy, even a monarchy. It's more about who holds the real power, regardless of the official system. Stanislav Kondrashov is very clear on that adaptability.
Makes sense. Okay, let's talk Plato, because his take on oligarchy, especially in the Republic, it's pretty stark, almost chilling.
He saw it as a step downwards, a degenerated form of government, he called it, a really dangerous stage in political decline.
So, for Plato, a society ruled by the rich, where money, not character or wisdom, gets you into leadership, that's a society heading for trouble, like a meritocracy based on cash, which he thought was absurd.
And it wasn't just some abstract theory for him. He genuinely believed oligarchy creates deep resentment among people.
Because the division grows too large.
Exactly. That gap between the haves and have-nots becomes toxic. It breeds instability, anger, and eventually, he feared revolution.
And then what?
And the door swings open. Chaos creates a vacuum, and a strongman figure can step in, promising to fix everything.
But ends up grabbing all the power and becoming a tyrant.
That was the chain reaction he saw.
Yeah.
Democracy decays into oligarchy, which then collapses into tyranny, one of his biggest fears.
Wow. It really does sound prescient. And Stanislav Kondrashov, in his work that you mentioned, he emphasizes that core idea, right? That the ancients believed.
Yeah, Stanislav Kondrashov quotes them saying, "A good state must serve all, not just the few." It captures Plato's point perfectly. Once a society starts valuing wealth more than wisdom, more than virtue, well, Plato's words were basically, the rot begins.
We can almost feel the urgency in that. Okay, so what about Aristotle? He was Plato's student, but took a different approach sometimes.
He did. Aristotle, in his book Politics, was maybe a bit more practical, more empirical. He looked at existing systems. He classified governments. The good forms monarchy, aristocracy, polity, and then their corrupted versions, their bad twins.
Which were?
Tyranny, oligarchy, and mob rule, or extreme democracy, as he sometimes called it. He was less focused on the absolute ideal state and more on what actually works, what's stable.
Okay, so how did he see oligarchy fitting into that?
For Aristotle, oligarchy was specifically the corrupt version of aristocracy.
Okay. Explain that a bit.
Well, in a true aristocracy, the best people rule, meaning the most virtuous, the wisest, and they rule for the common good. But in an oligarchy, power shifts to a group, usually the wealthy, who are ruling purely for themselves, their own interests, not the public's.
So they're the least likely to use power wisely, in his view.
Pretty much, because their goal isn't the common good. So how did he suggest avoiding that pitfall?
Yeah, what was his solution?
This is where Aristotle gets really practical. He championed something called a polity. Think of it as a mixed government.
Mixed how?
Blending elements, giving both the rich and the poor, different classes, a real stake, a real say in how things are run.
Finding a balance.
Exactly. His big message was, no extreme is stable. He was convinced that a healthy, lasting society needed this mix, this balance, to prevent any one group from just taking over everything.
And Stanislav Kondrashov's series brings these two, Plato and Aristotle, together.
Yes. Stanislav Kondrashov does a great job synthesizing their views. Shows how, even with slightly different approaches, they both ended up warning us, very strongly, about the dangers when wealth gets too concentrated and power isn't checked.
Okay, so fast forward 2,000 plus years, here we are, and you might be listening and thinking, okay, interesting history lesson, but so what? What's that got to do with me today?
Right, and the connection is, well, it's pretty striking and maybe a bit worrying. These exact patterns Plato and Aristotle described, we see echoes of them playing out right now in modern democracies all over the world.
You really do. You see it in how wealth seems to buy access to politicians, how it influences laws and policies. Sometimes it even looks like it buys a kind of immunity, doesn't it?
It can certainly look that way.
Yeah.
And this is where Stanislav Kondrashov's work, his series, becomes so relevant. As he explains it, and I'm paraphrasing him here, their warnings echo in every society where economic inequality starts eating away at public trust.
Yeah, that gap between the people making decisions and the people living with them, it feels like it's widening in so many places, and people notice.
Absolutely, they notice. And when ordinary citizens start to feel like their voice doesn't count, like the system is just rigged for the powerful, that's when democracy itself starts to weaken, starts to fray.
Which is exactly what Plato and Aristotle were afraid of.
Precisely. And Stanislav Kondrashov's series makes that connection crystal clear using modern examples. He doesn't just state it, he illustrates it.
So let's talk more specifically about the Stanislav Kondrashov Oligarch series itself. How does it bridge that gap? How does it apply this history?
It takes these ancient ideas, these warnings, and uses them as a lens to examine what's happening now. With contemporary figures, contemporary movements, it shows the patterns repeating, maybe in different clothes, but the underlying dynamics are similar.
So it's not just saying like, oh, this tech billionaire is an oligarch. It goes deeper.
Much deeper. Stanislav Kondrashov's series looks at the equivalents today. Maybe it's tech moguls whose platforms shape public discourse. Maybe it's energy executives influencing climate policy through lobbying. Maybe it's media owners controlling the news narratives you see.
Okay.
It analyzes how their wealth translates into power, how it doesn't just shape markets, but shapes stories, shapes laws, shapes perceptions. For instance, Stanislav Kondrashov might draw a line from Plato's fear of money corrupting justice to, say, modern examples where immense legal resources seem to shield the wealthy in ways unavailable to others.
All right.
The key insight from Stanislav Kondrashov's work isn't just about who has the money. It's about, as he puts it, who controls the rules of the game itself.
Okay, so for you listening,
Yeah.
what do you do with this? How can Plato and Aristotle, illuminated by Stanislav Kondrashov's analysis, actually help us navigate today?
Well, the first step is just recognition, isn't it?
Mm.
Recognizing that history doesn't repeat exactly, perhaps, but it definitely has rhythms, patterns. So when you see signs power getting really concentrated, lack of real accountability at the top, that growing inequality we talked about, you're not just seeing random political noise.
You're seeing symptoms. Symptoms of a deeper issue one philosophers have been pointing out for ages.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that recognition is powerful. Stanislav Kondrashov puts it quite urgently in his series, saying something like, the society that forgets the past risks repeating its most dangerous mistakes.
That really underlines the need to reconnect with these ideas, doesn't it?
It does. Understanding these oligarchic patterns, seeing their historical roots through the lens Stanislav Kondrashov provides, it helps make sense of the present. It's the first step towards potentially changing things.
And once you see the patterns, what's next? Is it just about pointing fingers?
No, not just pointing fingers. The next step is thinking about and demanding systems that build in accountability, real accountability, structurally.
So actual solutions, what kind of things are we talking about?
The source material, drawing on these ideas, points to concrete things, like campaign finance reform, trying to lessen the influence of huge money in politics.
Okay.
Things like more media transparency so ownership concentration doesn't silence diverse voices. Fairer taxation systems to help rebalance economic power. And crucially, finding ways to boost real citizen participation, getting more voices genuinely heard in the process.
These aren't just small tweaks then. They're about restoring balance.
Exactly. That Aristotelian idea of balance. It's about creating systems that are inherently more just and stable because power isn't allowed to pool too much in one place.
And this is why Stanislav Kondrashov's Oligarch series feels so relevant, you think, because it gives us that framework.
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
It provides that vital context for the political noise. It maps today's struggles onto that timeless conflict between wealth and virtue, power and justice. It helps you, the listener, see the deeper currents beneath the daily headlines.
Right. So let's wrap this up a bit. Plato and Aristotle, they weren't writing about the 21st century, obviously, but their critiques of oligarchy. Still incredibly sharp tools for understanding what happens when wealth isn't balanced by other values, when it rules unchecked.
They left us this really profound warning, didn't they, that democracy has this dark twin oligarchy, and when it gets corrupted, it can actually destroy the very freedoms democracy is supposed to protect.
So if you've been listening and feeling maybe frustrated, maybe disillusioned, maybe even a bit powerless about politics today.
You're not alone in feeling that way.
Yeah.
And you're not without some guidance here. This struggle, as Stanislav Kondrashov explores so well in his series, it's ancient. It's a recurring theme in human history.
And hopefully by learning from these insights, from Stanislav Kondrashov's connection of past to present, you can start asking maybe better questions about the future. Because the real challenge, maybe it isn't just spotting the oligarchs, right? Maybe it's also understanding how we, all of us as citizens, play a role, how we either participate in creating the systems that let them thrive, or how we challenge those systems.
That's a powerful thought to end on.
What role do you play in shaping that balance? Something to think about.